What if the truck sitting in your driveway right now is not really the brand you think it is? Imagine paying full price for a GMC Sierra, GMC quality, GMC engineering, that professional grade reputation, only to find out that underneath the badge, it is the same truck Chevy sells as a Silverado for thousands less. Sometimes built by the same person on the same assembly line, one right after the other. Believe me, this is not some internet rumor. This is how GM has been doing business for years. And the price difference between these two trucks can hit $20,000 depending on the trim. So today, I am breaking it all down. Which trims are identical, where the real differences actually exist, and exactly when the Sierra is worth the money versus when you are just paying for a grille and a logo. I have had both of these trucks on my lift more times than I can count, and I personally think this is something every truck buyer needs to understand before walking into a dealership. But before we get into the specific trucks, you need to know why GMC even exists in the first place. Because the answer to that question tells you everything about why they charge what they charge. Back in 2009, GM was bankrupt. The government stepped in with a bailout, and part of the deal was cutting brands that were not worth keeping, and GMC was next on the chopping block. The government's auto task force looked at GMC and said what a lot of us have been thinking for years. It is just a Chevy with a different grille. Why does this brand exist? And they were right. The Sierra was a Silverado with a different grille and a higher sticker. But GM pulled out the profit numbers, and suddenly the conversation changed. Bob Lutz, who was one of the top guys at GM at the time, said they walked into that meeting and showed them how much money GMC makes. And the task force backed off. GMC survived because it makes GM more money selling the same truck at a higher price. That decision in 2009 is the reason you are paying a premium at the GMC lot today. Every Denali trim, every AT4 badge, every dollar of that markup traces back to a boardroom where GM proved that enough buyers will pay more for chrome and a red logo. I had a Sierra and a Silverado next to each other on the lift in the shop about a month ago. Same model year, both running the 5.3-liter V8 with the 10-speed automatic. Out of curiosity, I started checking part numbers between them. Cabin air filter, same. Engine air filter, brake rotors, spark plugs, serpentine belt, alternator, transfer case, all were identical. Honestly, I could have swapped the water pumps between the two and nobody would have noticed. That is not really surprising when you look at how they are built. Both trucks come off the same assembly lines at Fort Wayne Assembly in Indiana and the GM Silao plant in Mexico. Silverados and Sierras roll down the line one after another, built by the same workers using the same tools and components. The frame, body, drivetrain, and basically all the core mechanical parts are the same between the two trucks. Most of the differences are cosmetic, mainly the front-end styling and the tailgate design. Even the tailgate hardware itself is shared. GMC markets it as the Multi-Pro tailgate, while Chevy calls theirs the Multi-Flex. Now that the background is clear, let's move to the real-world examples. Silverado WT versus Sierra Pro. This is the bottom of the lineup, and this is the one that bothers me the most. The Silverado WT starts at about $44,895. The Sierra Pro starts at $46,195. That is $1,300 more. Pop the hood on both of these trucks, and you cannot tell which is which. 2.7-liter Turbo 4, 8-speed automatic, the same frame underneath, vinyl floors, and basic cloth inside. Every piece of hardware is shared, down to the part numbers. The only thing that changes is the grille and the badge on the tailgate. Same truck, different logo, $1,300 for a badge swap. These are work trucks. Nobody is buying a WT or a Pro to impress anyone. So who is paying $1,300 extra for a GMC badge on a truck with vinyl floors? I want to meet that person because I have some other stuff I would like to sell them. If something breaks on either of these trucks, you are walking into a GM dealer with the same parts catalog and the same warranty. The Sierra Pro gives you nothing extra for that money. If you are a contractor or a fleet buyer picking the Sierra Pro over the WT, you are handing GM free money and they are not even pretending to give you something back for it. But $1,300 is pocket change compared to what happens when you start looking at the off-road trucks. This next one made me angry when I dug into the numbers. Silverado Custom Trail Boss versus Sierra AT4. The Silverado Custom Trail Boss might be the best kept secret in the truck market. For about $53,995, Chevy gives you a factory lift, the Z71 off-road package with Rancho shocks and a locking rear differential, plus real mud tires straight from the dealer lot. No aftermarket nonsense, no dealer add-ons. You drive it home and hit a trail the same weekend. If you want a GMC Sierra that can handle the same kind of terrain, the cheapest option is the AT4 at $67,295. That is $13,000 more. And you know what GMC stuffs into that price whether you want it or not? Leather seats, heated and cooled, a Bose sound system, luxury trim everywhere. You cannot walk into a GMC dealer and order a basic dirt truck. They will not sell you one. And I think that tells you everything you need to know about who GMC is actually building for. They are not building for the guy loading his truck onto a fire road at 5 in the morning. They're building for the guy who parks it at brunch and wants people to notice. That is a $13,000 image tax. And if you are cool with paying it, GMC loves you for it. The top of the off-road lineup tells the same story, but with bigger numbers. The Silverado ZR2 and the Sierra AT4X use identical Multimatic DSSV dampers, literally identical. Pull the part number off a ZR2 damper and look it up. It is the same part on the AT4X. Locking differentials, mud terrain tires, a factory lift, all shared hardware. But the AT4X costs $6,000 more because it wraps all of that in massage seats and a premium stereo. I had a customer ask me once which one was the better off-road truck, and I told him to save the $6,000 and buy the ZR2 because the dirt does not care what logo is on your grill. Now here's where this whole thing flips. Everything I just showed you points one direction. Chevy cheaper, GMC overpriced. But there's one trim level where GMC actually undercuts Chevy, and I guarantee nobody at either dealership is going to bring it up. Silverado LTZ versus Sierra SLT. The Sierra SLT starts at about $55,395. The Silverado LTZ starts at about $57,995. Let that land for a second. The GMC is $2,600 cheaper than the Chevy. After everything I just told you about GMC charging more for the same truck, they somehow made the SLT cheaper than the LTZ. And nobody talks about this because it breaks the whole narrative. Chevy dealers don't want you knowing a GMC costs less. GMC dealers don't want you knowing either because they'd rather steer you past the SLT and into a Denali where they actually make money. Both sides benefit from you never comparing these two trucks in the same room. And that's exactly what happens. People walk into a Chevy dealer and only look at Chevy prices. People walk into a GMC dealer and only look at GMC prices. Almost nobody drives across town to put them next to each other. The dealers are counting on that. GM set this up so the LTZ sits higher in the Chevy lineup than the SLT sits in the GMC lineup, and that gap creates a $2,600 window where the smarter buy is actually the one with the red badge. If you are shopping from $55,000 to $60,000 and you want a leather interior half-ton with a 5.3 V8, buy the SLT. Take the $2,600 you saved and put it toward a bed liner or a set of running boards. If your Chevy salesman tries to tell you the LTZ is worth the extra money, ask him what you are getting for it. He will not have an answer because there is not one. If you are finding this useful, do me a favor and subscribe. I break down stuff like this every week so you do not get taken advantage of at the dealership. Now the Denali. A lot of you have been asking me to break down this comparison, and this next part is the reason I finally made the video. We need to talk about the Denali, because this is where General Motors' whole strategy either makes complete sense or completely falls apart depending on how you look at it. Silverado High Country versus Sierra Denali Ultimate. A fully loaded Silverado High Country sits around $73,000 to $76,000. A Sierra Denali Ultimate can push past $96,000. That is up to $20,000 apart. Both are built at the same Fort Wayne assembly plant in Indiana, on the same line with the same 6.2-liter V8 under the hood. So where does $20,000 actually go? I went through every feature on the Denali Ultimate looking for the answer, and most of it is interior decoration. Massaging seats that the High Country does not offer at any price. A 12-speaker Bose surround system instead of a 7-speaker. Full-grain leather in a color GMC calls Alpine Umber. Exotic wood trim with a laser-etched terrain map of Mount Denali carved into the dash, and 22-inch machined wheels. It looks incredible. I am not going to lie about that. But you are paying $20,000 more for a truck that massages your back and has a mountain carved into the dashboard. The Carbon Pro carbon fiber bed is the one piece of genuinely exclusive hardware. It is 60 pounds lighter than steel, and it is never offered on any Silverado. Super Cruise hands-free driving comes standard on the Denali Ultimate, while High Country charges you an extra $2,855 for it. So there is real stuff in there, maybe $5,000 to $7,000 worth. The other $13,000 is the privilege of telling people you drive a Denali. And here's what really gets me. The Denali Ultimate doesn't just cost more, it actually does less. You cannot add the Z71 off-road package. You cannot add the Max trailering package. You are locked into the 6.2-liter V8 with no option for the 5.3-liter V8. GM took their most expensive truck and made it the least flexible one in the lineup. The Silverado High Country lets you configure for max towing, off-road capability, or daily driving. The Denali Ultimate only lets you configure for looking expensive. GM did that on purpose. They don't want Denali buyers thinking about tow ratings and skid plates. They want them thinking about leather colors and wheel finishes. And it's working. Over 30% of every GMC sold in this country is a Denali or Denali Ultimate. The average Sierra buyer is dropping over $66,000. That's Range Rover territory. GM kept this brand alive in 2009 for one reason, not because it builds a better truck, because it builds a more expensive receipt. The Denali isn't competing with the Silverado anymore. It's going up against the Ram 1500 Tungsten and the Ford F-150 Platinum, and it's outselling both of them. 2 million Denali models moved since 1999. You can call that success. I call it the most profitable badge swap in the history of the American auto industry. GM almost killed GMC 17 years ago because the government called it pointless. The engineering side of that argument hasn't changed. These are still the same trucks. But GM figured out that if you wrap the same frame in enough leather and wood and chrome, a third of buyers will happily pay $20,000 extra and never look under the hood. That's a business model built on the fact that most people buy with their eyes, not with a spec sheet. And if all of this makes you miss the days when Chevy trucks were just trucks, go watch my video on the 10 legendary old Chevy trucks that still destroy every 2026 pickup. Some of those old engines are still running with 300,000 miles on the clock, no computers, no badge games, just iron and steel that refuse to quit.